As we all know, GoldenEye 007 on N64 is the single greatest Bond game ever made, but for a short period of time when 007 First Light came out, a lot of people tried to come out and say that that was the best Bond game ever made, that it was some amazing thing, that it sold 1.5 million units on day one. You know, all these people were trying to come out and glaze the game and say it wasn't woke and say it was the best of Uncharted mixed with like I don't even know what. It was just like the hype cycle around this game was so suspect that a lot of people like immediately denounced the game as just being ridiculous. And another example of what's going on with culture and just woke agendas and just the 007 license in particular, which honestly I think now is completely dead. Because if you've been keeping up at all, you know that the rights holders have run the brand into the ground. They have no idea what they're doing. The Daniel Craig movies were awful. The series has been like compromised for a very, very, very long time, much longer than I think most people will acknowledge. So to that end, I really ask you, why exactly do we still try and go through this song and dance? Why exactly are so many people determined to push this idea that First Light was going to be anything other than just another licensed game slop? I don't know. It was frustrating. It was obnoxious. And I went to Twitter today, talking about this, about how so many people were glazing this game and how that didn't really seem to reflect in the sales numbers. The Steam charts have been posted and people noticed immediately that they weren't too impressive. And all the indications seem to show that there wasn't a lot of faith in this one, that people didn't get excited at seeing James Bond Soy Boy edition. But of course, a lot of game journos, a lot of people who nobody trusts came out and they tried to dogpile me. They tried to attack me. They tried to denounce what Harman Smith is saying. And so I felt the need to make this video to kind of make my point clear, is that for a license like James Bond, one of the most profitable IPs in the world, one of the biggest movie franchises in the world, this long running thing, 1.5 million units in a day is not all that impressive. Like, considering the budget and considering how much time they spent on this game, 1.5 million units is embarrassingly low. Is just the simple fact of the matter is, like, going forward, this game is going to have a lot of bad word of mouth. People are going to see that it doesn't have a Switch 2 version, that it's glitchy, that it's boring, the story makes no sense. The woke elements are going to be talked about more. All the attempts at circumventing like woke backlash to things, mostly showing like attractive females on social media. Primarily speaking, 007 fails in all the ways that a 007 game can fail at. Like, it's not particularly good at being a 007 game. And it feels like the people defending this game don't know anything about the brand or the character. The sheer amount of people I've spoken to over the past couple of days who have insisted that M has always been a woman and that Bond has always had a lot of respect for her clearly don't know the first thing about the character and how the M character in and of herself was a woke subversion of like the original male M, who is much more in line with the original Fleming novels. In fact, I feel as if a lot of the people who are glazing this game are not familiar with the novels at all, and not familiar with the character in his original incarnation. Like, for example, like, how many of these people genuinely seem to think that James Bond is like a code name and that all the actors playing him are like completely different characters? who are all just going by the same code name, which is obviously not true if you watch like the older films. Like it's all very, very transparent that like all of them are supposed to be the same person. Now, at a certain point, that stopped being true, but that was mostly because of just how long these movies gone on and just, constantly reshuffling the actors and constantly recasting. Like, Bond himself is not even the only example of this. There are lots of examples of characters that were recast over the years, but it's frustrating. Frustrating how the masses have this mentality. They have this idea that Bond can be like reinvented, that he can be something different, that he can be changed with the times, because we all know what that's a code for, right? We all know what that means. Like the idea of that mindset, to modernize Bond basically means to make him softer, to make him more emotional, to make him more effeminized, to make him subservient to, women, to just kind of emasculate the character. And you can kind of see this in like the most recent Daniel Craig films, how we had this gradual shift from cool, hardcore Bond in Casino Royale to like a little bitch at the end of like No Time to Die. Like, again, this has not been like a sudden transition. This has been like a pretty active mentality among the filmmakers and among the rights holders for a long time, is to try and like push this idea that Bond can be more like effeminate. And it directly goes against the core appeal of the character and like the nature of the franchise as a whole. Like, as we've seen with the most recent Bond films, this kind of approach does not work. And I feel as if the direction they're trying to take it more recently with the novels and with the fan fiction novels, the novels that continue to be published after Ian Fleming's death, with the more recent fan fiction novels and this video game, the angle they're going with it now is to make the female leads like way more competent than Bond. They're the ones who save him. They're the ones who who get the better of him. They're way more competent, smarter people. Like, and that just completely goes against like the core identity of the franchise. And it's something that I feel like a lot of people are dead set against. You can watch like old interviews, from like the really old, I believe even as early as like the 70s, where like, the film people are desperately trying to push this angle that like Bond girls are useless. Bond girls don't do anything. Bond girls are they're stereotypes. And like the entire purpose of that kind of push was to try and pressure the filmmakers and everyone involved to make like the female leads like turn them into men, basically, to turn them into action stars, to turn them into like to make them better than Bond himself in a way at like what he does. It's the very same mentality that led us to like that weird scene in like Star Wars, The Force Awakens, when like, Rey goes into the Millennium Falcon and she knows how it works better than like Han Solo does. Like, even though that doesn't make any sense, bro. It's just like she's never seen it before. That's his ship. It's like the entire point is to like emasculate men and make women look way more competent than like they ever could realistically be. It's like feminist propaganda, essentially. And that's what like the Bond filmmakers have been desperately trying to do for decades now. It's not a recent thing. And it seems like this is their attempt at like rebooting the Daniel Craig formula, because it's the same template, honestly, with like Casino Royale. They did the same thing where they tried to do that thing where they're like, oh yeah, he's younger. This is a prequel. This is like how he started out. This is like, this is a new kind of James Bond. Like, that's the language they're going to use to justify like pushing this angle. And I remind you that like the general template for this kind of thing is to make the first entry kind of innocuous and then slowly start ramping them up with the sequels. We saw this with like the Craig films where they got like, by Skyfall, he was like implying he was bisexual, right? So you have like a lot of things like this that really strongly indicate that like the brand is going downhill. And I really asked, like, what is even the point of following Bond media in like 2026, because there are so much material out there that's better, that gets the same general appeal out there, like better, or like has kind of evolved the formula. I kind of felt that way about Spy Family in a weird way, because it would be really easy to think of it as like a parody of Bond or a parody of spy fiction in general, but it's really not. It goes in this weird, like wholesome, like direction with it, which Bond really couldn't handle. In a lot of ways, Spy Family kind of encompasses what like modern Bond tries to pretend to be, while still like maintaining like the masculine energy of like, the father. You know what I mean? And that's just something that like these Western women can't understand or can't write for, and are just desperately trying to like subvert and destroy, which they should not even be allowed to do. This game is a really interesting case study, I think, because the industry came out and tried to give it glowing scores. They tried to say it wasn't woke. They tried to say that people were exaggerating about the issues and about their concerns. And the end result of it was that like people weren't even fooled. They didn't even try to like do that thing where they're like, oh, I'm just going to give it a chance. Like, no, like the vast majority among the actual player base was to just reject it immediately and just kind of move on. And I do think that's the mentality we should have about these kind of things. Like, honestly, I don't trust modern game designers or modern filmmakers to tackle something like James Bond. They have a long time. They have like a decade to go before they've like rebuilt the trust with like, firing everybody involved, with ruining the character, retconning all the stuff that's happened in the novels, retconning re-examining their values and like really understanding what the audience wants. Until they do that, like I'm not even going to consider it. And the reality is, it's very apparent when a game is compromised, when they start going off about like emotional vulnerability, or like, we want to make a new Bond, or even the whole like angle of him being younger in this one. Like, all of it is just a giant red flag, and it completely scared away this game's target audience. The gaming crash is here, and it's been brought about entirely by nonsense like this. We have gotten really good Bond games in the past. Okay, so this is a really interesting example of a licensed game where the industry can't gaslight you into thinking this is the first good Bond game, or even the first good one recently. In a lot of ways, I would say like the Hitman games from the same developer are actually better Bond games than this in a lot of aspects. Like, I don't understand why they thought any of this would be a good idea. Going forward, game developers really need to take the audience into consideration. There shouldn't have been any doubt going into this that like, no, we're not going with the woke direction. We're not doing any of that subversive shit. We're not going to have a female M, and we're not going to make Moneypenny ugly. Okay, we're going to make like a good Bond game that appeals to like the actual demographic, men. Instead of trying to do this half-assed like two-faced thing where they try to imply that they're making this good base traditional Bond film, the origin story of the character, when in fact it's meant to be a subversive take on the brand that's meant to emasculate him and make him look like a bitch. No matter how many like attractive females you throw in the game, that doesn't really change the fact that that's not all that we want. That's not all what we need. And I do think that's like the most important thing to take away from this, because I think this is what the wokies think now, that as long as they throw attractive females into things like this, that people will start eating it up again. And that's something that we really should start rejecting. Like, they're going to have to do a lot better than that if they're going to get people fired up about further entries in this series. So what do you guys think about 007 First Light? Let me know in the comments. Like and comment if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe to this channel, and I will see you all next time. Thank you.